fresh coffee, well, fresh instant coffee that I just made. Good evening, Gordon Cossey, as always, coming live Sunday at 11:17. I'm looking down in the corner. That's where the clock is, a couple minutes late. Just wanted to talk about this whole hashtag TrudeauMustGo phenomenon that's taking over Twitter. Now, at least in Canada, among Canadian Twitter users. And I know it's getting zero coverage in the mainstream media. CBC Nightly News, CTV's Global are not talking about it, or if they're talking about it, that they're trying to paint it as certainly senior members of the Liberal Party of Canada are trying to paint it as a orchestrated protest, an orchestrated little manipulative game that's being orchestrated by the Conservatives or potentially by the Russians. That Russian operatives have nothing better than they're trying to undermine Canadian democracy. And I saw a number of people who I actually know firsthand, actual people, not bots, who had shared their little snippet. You've seen all these, I'm X number of years of age, I work at this, I went to college for that, I have 2 kids, I have grandkids, blah, 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 blah. And Justin Trudeau says that I have unacceptable views and that I'm a racist and a misogynist. If you don't know what misogynist means, it means you hate women, and then Trudeau must go. So I finally, I joined the herd in this respect. I put out my own little tweet. I've linked it below. Mine says, I'm 56, married to a woman who emigrated to Canada as a child. I have 3 kids who are defined as biracial, although to me, they're simply wonderful human beings. I'm a vet who opted not to get jabbed. Now I work in a retail setting. Justin says I have unacceptable views. Trudeau must go. Funny thing is, now, when this whole unacceptable views thing come out, it was January or February, just ahead of the convoys arriving in Ottawa during the trucker protest, honk honk, that Trudeau said there are a number of people coming to Ottawa right now, and these are, he referred to them as being a fringe minority who don't represent Canadians, and these are people who often don't follow science and are racist, misogynist, and hold unacceptable views. That was the genesis, but that was all the way back. That was six or so months ago when that happened. When the convoy was actually going on, I put some tweets out at that time with the hashtag Trudeau must go. And I wasn't the only one. There were other posts with Trudeau must go, but it never caught on. It never went viral. But now it has gone viral. And I do think it's likely that there are some individuals, some people with power, money, influence, who have kind of pushed this, and everyone's getting swept up in it. And the question is it having any tangible impact on things? And potentially it is. There's talk now that the Trudeau government is at least discussing the potential to remove basically all of the COVID measures that are still in place, and there are still some in place. A foreign national coming into Canada who has not gotten a COVID vaccine is ineligible to enter the country. It's the same in the United States. That's why Novak Djokovic was not able to compete in the US Tennis Open, because he has refused the jabs. There's this Arrive Canada application. There's also talk on a Canadian federal government website where they're looking to recruit nurses, qualified nurses, to serve as quarantine officers. But it's kind of a preliminary process where they're just screening people for something that may or may not happen. And so now we do have the government talking, at least signaling that they're discussing the potential to remove the last of the remaining mandates that still exist at the federal level. That I would applaud that, yay. But the simple fact of the matter is we're stuck with, barring something extremely dramatic, we're stuck with Justin Trudeau until 2025 for another 2+ years. And the reason is because in our system of democracy, parliamentary democracy, right now the Liberals are sitting and they have 158 sitting members. The Conservatives, next in line, the official opposition, His Majesty's loyal opposition, and now led by Pierre Poilievre, they sit at 118 seats. So there's a deficit there between the Conservatives and the Liberals of 40 seats. So anytime a piece of legislation comes up to be voted on, the Liberals have 158 votes. The Conservatives only have 118. Now, there are two other main parties that have enough seats that if they got together, they could push the Conservatives over the top. And that would be the Bloc Quebecois and the NDP. The Bloc has 32 seats. So even if Pierre Poilievre managed to get the Bloc and their 32 members to vote down the Liberal government, he still would only have 140 votes, 140, to the Liberals 158. He would also need to get the NDP, and unfortunately the way parliamentary democracy works is that each party, Liberal, Conservative, Bloc, NDP, they each have what is referred to as a party whip. And you'll hear a term, it happens more in the United States, but they'll talk about a whipped vote. And what will happen is the party whip, their job is party discipline to ensure that everyone votes the way that the leader, the cabinet table, the inner circle wants. So everyone has to vote that way. Now, you do on occasion, it does happen that there are mavericks who defy what's sometimes referred to as party discipline, and they vote against their own party. And when that happens, there can be repercussions for that individual who voted against. Ultimately, they can be kicked right out of the party, which in Canada's system of democracy, if you don't have the machinery of a party behind you, it is extremely hard to get elected. It does happen, but it is rare that independent candidates are elected. Typically what will happen is when there are members sitting in parliament who are independent, typically they're people who have either left their party and chosen to sit as an independent, or they've been kicked out. Right now, we have 2 independents sitting in our House of Commons. There's 1 vacancy, 2 green, 2 independents. So even if Pierre Poilievre got, he has his 118, and if he got the 32 from the Bloc, he's to 140. If he got the Greens, that's 142. Got those 2 independents, 144. If the vacancy ends up tipping his way and becomes a Conservative sitting member, well, he's still only at 145, and the Liberals have 158. And the only way we can have an election, well, there are 2 ways. One way is if there's a vote of non-confidence, where if at least those 3 parties join up together, the Conservatives, Bloc, and NDP, and they vote down a piece of legislation that has money attached to it, or anything that is declared a confidence vote. If the governing party, the Liberals, Justin Trudeau, if his party loses the confidence of the House of Commons, then the Governor General, who is the King's representative, because it's the King who's the head of state in Canada, then the Governor General will dissolve Parliament and call a general election. So that's one way. The only other way it can happen is if Justin Trudeau himself were to go to the Governor General and to ask for Parliament to be dissolved for the purpose of calling a general election, which is something we saw. Trudeau was elected first in 2015. He was elected to a majority, so he didn't need anyone's support. He didn't need anyone's backing. Right now, he needs either one of the Bloc or NDP, just either one of those two. And the NDP have signed something of a loose coalition with his government. So they've agreed to support him on any legislation that could be deemed a confidence vote. But when in 2015, when he won, he didn't need that. He could anything. He could whip the vote, and we had Trudeau was prime minister from 2015 until 2019 with a majority mandate. Then in 2019, we had an election because Canada has something referred to as a fixed election law. Although I don't know if it's necessarily a law. It used to be that a government could remain in power for 5 years, but then Stephen Harper introduced legislation around fixed election dates, and they're to happen every 4 years, like in the United States. And I don't know how concrete that legislation is. I do know that you can still call an election early. Harper did it during his time, even after establishing this fixed election date law, this 4-year law. So anyway, Trudeau had his majority. 2019, ran for re-election, was re-elected with a minority. And then 2 years into that minority mandate, just I think it was September, October of 2019, just before our world blew up with lockdown measures and all the rest. He called an election. The reason he called the election, this is an editorial comment, it was because he wanted a majority government. He didn't like having to kowtow and to placate second and third parties in the legislature, in the parliament. So he went to the electorate. Polling was indicating that he was up in majority territory, so it was a chance to get out of a minority situation into a majority, but it didn't work out for him. I mean, it was basically status quo when we had the election in 2021. He was returned with another minority, and actually his share of the popular vote actually went down. The Conservatives, both in 2019 and 2021, actually got more votes than the Conservatives. But our crappy system of parliamentary democracy, it's not based on popular vote. It's based on the number of seats, and the Conservative vote is very inefficient because they win in Alberta, often with 65-70% of the vote. But whether you win by one, whether a candidate in a riding in Alberta wins by one vote or by 10,000 votes, it's still one seat. And so they would romp to victory in Alberta, and when they lost seats in Ontario, they'd lose by a small margin. So the Conservative vote is very inefficient. And the upshoot of it all is that until 2025, unless the loose coalition, the agreement between the Liberals and the NDP fall apart, and if the Bloc Quebecois then also comes on side, only then would we have an election before 2025. So I know I got into a Twitter exchange with someone who was saying, Pierre Poilievre needs to, have an election called now or as soon as possible. And it's like, well, he can't. There's no legal way within our system of democracy for him to do it. Unfortunately, Trudeau holds all the cards. And so long as the NDP and Bloc stay on side, And even if you got, let's say you got the NDP to break their agreement, now you have the Bloc Quebecois with their 32 sitting members. They're all earning, I think it's in and around the $200,000 a year figure. And do you want to risk losing that cushy job? You're going again to the electorate. You could lose. And the Bloc Québécois has no particular allegiance to Canada as a nation anyway. The Bloc was formed by Lucien Bouchard back in the 90s, and its sole intent was to at the federal level, to do what was needed, whatever they could, to facilitate the removal of Quebec from the Canadian Federation. So we're stuck. And the big question coming up now, and I think a lot of the impetus behind this TrudeauMustGo hashtag movement, for lack of a better word, is fear over what is coming in this fall and winter. And Trudeau already recently signaled within the last week or so, within 2 weeks certainly, I think it was about 7, 8, 9 days ago, CTV released a video where Trudeau was talking about the absolute imperative need for people to go and get updated on their boosters. And he didn't say that if everyone gets boosted, that more emergency measures won't happen. All he simply said is if we can get to, I believe he said 80 to 90%, 80, 85, 90%. If we can get up there, there will be less need for these emergency measures that have proven so problematic. And I think that's close to a quote to what he actually said. He did use the word, he did refer to the lockdown measures. He didn't use lockdown. He didn't use that term. He used emergency measures or mandates or a term similar to that. And he referred to them as problematic. Well, they're more than just problematic. Don't forget that people lost jobs, businesses, life savings, homes over these measures. The government stepped in and picked winners and losers, essential and non-essential. And that was the most egregious thing I've ever seen politically, calling people essential and non-essential. That just cut me to my core, because all human beings are essential. And using a virus and using fear of disease to drive a wedge between people is the worst form of politics. I did a video during the trucker convoy that amazingly got something like 500-600 views, and I put on my old beret from my time in the forces, which I don't like to do. I don't like to use my status as a vet to push my opinions, but the way I saw Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, and I took him to task as well. Not that it matters, not that anyone's listening to me, but what are you going to do when you live in the zoo? And the rhetoric that Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, in particular, that they were foisting on people to drive a wedge between Canadians and to separate and divide and drive hatred was and is disgusting. And Trudeau's never repudiated his remarks. I think he's even maybe doubled down on them a couple times since. And there's no excuse for it anymore, because everyone knows that double, triple, quadruple jabbed, you can still get it. You can still get very sick, and you can still go to hospital, and you can still pass it on to others. So there's no scientific basis for any form of mandates or passports or other garbage. And what happened during that Ottawa convoy is that Unfortunately, we've got a very compliant media in this country. I'm convinced, they're basically dancing to the tune of the same master, and so the media in this country is no help whatsoever. This Trudeau must go hashtag, they're ignoring it, or if they do report on it, it's a manipulative, coercive campaign that's being backed by the Russians or by political operatives, and that these are just bots. I'm not a bot, and they're trying to undermine Canadian democracy. This is Canadian democracy. It's Canadians speaking out, sharing their thoughts and ideas. Another difficulty of this, and another term we hear all the time, is cancel culture. And some may not fully what do you mean cancel culture? Well, look at me. I'm a 56-year-old white man. And so rather than deal with my ideas, if someone doesn't like the ideas I express, rather than compete intellectually and try to discount my ideas intellectually, rather than do that, you say, oh, old white guy. Okay, boomer is another term that gets thrown around. Rush Limbaugh used to do that on the right. Rush Limbaugh used to call the Democrats the spendocrats. Oh, aren't you cute? You took demo and you changed it to spendo. That's so funny. It's brain dead. This jingoism that goes on in the political arena, but it's all about winning. And so integrity, honesty, these things have no truck. They have no pun intended. These things have no weight in the political arena. It's all about winning and losing. So any port in a storm, if you have to be intellectually dishonest and throw your integrity in the garbage, but if you win, it's okay. And that's the world we live in, sadly. So we're stuck with sock boy, a jingoistic term. Sorry, but we're stuck with Trudeau at least until 2025. And at that point, during the last two federal elections, I'm voting for, I'm in the past two federal elections, so not 2015, but in 2019 and 2021, I'll tell you right now, I voted PPC. You'll see a video if you look through my archives. There's one of me wearing a PPC shirt. I never became, actually, I was never a paid member of the party. When it first started out, when Maxime Bernier created it, you could sign up as a member and not pay anything. And I went, okay, and I joined. But I never paid any money to join. I'm done with joining political parties. I'm a lifetime political junkie, studied political science at university. And with that being said, I'm no expert on politics. I think I know it better than the average lay person, but I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on politics any more than I'm an expert on virology, epidemiology, or infectious disease. But I do question where things are going to happen. What is going to happen in the fall, in the winter, when temperatures get cold? I mean, it would be easy to think if influenzas were a new thing, it would be easy to think, well, we got nothing to worry about. Look, May, June, July, August, September, things have been great. No, influenzas, it was overblown. Nothing to worry about. And then October, November, December hits and our hospitals get slammed. What changed? Why did all of a sudden flu blow up? You think there could be a seasonal component to viral transmission? Yeah, well, it seems like there is. We have flu season. We've seen the same thing during the COVID era. Infection rates go up, hospitalizations go up, and they come down. Then they go up, and then they come down. We have this seemingly seasonal fluctuations that happen of waves. And we're coming into the fall and winter season, which is a respiratory viral season. And now we've got 80-90% of the population walking around who've taken 2, 3, 4 jabs of a pharmaceutical that had been worked on for 20 plus years, with never able to get an approved product out of the trial process until bam, they rushed it through at warp speed at in 8-9 months and did no long-term safety studies. Could something go wrong? Obviously something could go wrong. Will it? Open question. I already know too many people, who have had severe adverse events post rolling up their sleeves. Cause and effect, can't prove it. You got to do investigation for that, and as far as I know, the investigation isn't done. So there's no proven link, because can't prove it. Didn't investigate, so it's unproven. But I'm talking about deaths, heart attacks, strokes, massive aneurysm, and other less severe things. And I know that right now it's only about 50% of Canadians who've had 2 doses who have, it's only about 50-odd% who have gone in to get a third. About 50% of those, of the 80 to 90% of the population of Canadians who got their 2, roughly half of them tapped out and said, okay, I'm done. I don't want another one. Thank you. Now we have Justin Trudeau saying that unless we get to 80, 85, 90% of Canadians rolling up their sleeve and getting up to date on their boosters, well then, if that doesn't happen, there's going to be greater need for emergency measures. If we do get those numbers, 80, 85, 90%, if 80 to 90% of Canadians do get up to date on their boosters, well, he didn't say there would be no need for emergency measures. He just said then it would be less need. So there's still going to be a need. Read between the lines. This is political speak. These words are crafted carefully. Justin is reading a script, and the messaging is carefully prepared, unlike my videos, which I do off the cuff. So I'm going to end it there. If you have a story to share on why Justin Trudeau must go, join in. And maybe, the media is going to ignore it. We've got a battle almost between individuals who are banding together, and then we have the media who's trying to program everyone what to think. That's why they call it programming. This is what you're supposed to think. This is how you're supposed to feel. And there's a large group of Canadians who are going, no, we're unplugging from that media programming, and we're going to try and influence the public discourse through other means, Twitter being one of them. So, but Twitter's a bit of a cesspool. All of social media is a bit of a cesspool. Best way to do it is to, get out and talk to people. And don't be shy. Let people know how you feel. Be polite, but Trudeau must go. So anyway, good night, 29 minutes. God bless. Happy Sunday.